Psych Sessions is now sponsored by STP. That's the Society for the Teaching of Psychology. That's APA Division II, or our teaching tribe. STP's Graduate Student Teaching Association, GSTA, recently published an ebook, How We Teach Now, the GSTA Guide to Transformative Teaching, is now available on the teachpsych.org homepage. The STP homepage also includes links to the most recent entries of the GSTA's blog and other STP blogs. Eric and I encourage you to become a member of STP, the Society for the Teaching of Psychology. For only $25 a year, you get some amazing benefits and resources, so please go to teachpsych.org and check that out.
Hello, and welcome to Psych Sessions, conversations about teaching and stuff. I'm Eric Landrum, along with Garth Neufeld, your podcast hosts. As the name implies, we center on conversations about teaching, but we often veer into other interesting topics, which is the end stuff. This is episode number 94, where I had the opportunity to interview folks regarding the Communicating Psychological Science course at Minnesota State University-Mankato in Mankato, Minnesota, who included Dr. Karla Lassonde and Dr. Emily Stark and undergraduate students Louisa and Ellie Tiegs, our first undergraduate students on the podcast. Now, before you hear the interview, please allow me to share some listening tips and some of my favorite moments. So this was a real treat to be able to talk to two faculty members and two undergraduate students. And ostensibly, it was about the course that Dr. Lassonde and the two students were a part of, and that Karla and Emily collaborate on a website about. But then we shifted into other topics later on, which I will talk about specifically regarding the COVID-19 pivot, which was in the midst of the semester that we were talking about during the podcast. And so Ellie and Louisa were juniors at the time of taking the course, just finishing up their junior year. And so this was a delightful conversation. So it centered around the course that they were enrolled in with Karla called Communicating Psychological Science. And Karla had been to a Alan Alda Institute focused on from Stony Brook about communicating science. And her interest in this comes from studying misconceptions in psychology. And she kind of got her start in this by receiving an APS Teaching Fund grant, which is kind of comes full circle because that's really one of the places that Garth and I got our start in doing psych sessions, from an APS Teaching Fund grant. And so I appreciated that. And I also, as you'll hear in the podcast, a very supportive departmental culture, which Karla and Emily over and over again acknowledge, of which I gently admonish them about, not really admonish, but I don't think they take as much credit as they deserve. And you'll listen to that. I'm sure you'll hear that. Loved hearing students, oh my goodness, listening to the students talk about, in their own words, about a transformative class and what they come out of. At the end of the podcast, you're going to hear them talk about how, because of COVID-19 and because of the pivot to online, Emily talks about how she really feels like, she didn't use these words, how she feels ripped off, that she wasn't able to see her classmates and to see her professor to say goodbye at the end of the course. Oh my goodness, what an amazing thing to hear from a student who is in your class for a semester. And so I think they really captured something special here. And I was just really pleased to be a part of a conversation to hear them talk about this class and this experience. And so I really want to encourage you, if you want to see kind of a model of how to think about how you might use the outcome and celebrate students' work, if you go to communicatingpsychologicalscience.com, it's all run together, no spaces, no underscores. Communicatingpsychologicalscience.com would be the place to go. I really appreciated that they talked about the role of empathy and communicating, just not only psychological science, but just in making connections with other human beings and communicating with them. I think in the era of 2020 and Black Lives Matter that we're going through here now in the early summer of 2020, and I am sure it's going to continue throughout 2020, that understanding the role of better communications from one person to another is an incredibly critical skill for all of us to have. And then again, as I've already mentioned, we ended up the podcast talking about the COVID-19 pivot. So it was really interesting for me to get the perspectives of other folks on different campuses, both faculty members and students, about how they prepared for it, what their perspectives were, and a little bit of a preview of thinking about what we might be thinking about for the fall, and really thinking about how we tell our story better, how we prepare for that in the future. So I really appreciate these four individuals for taking time out. We actually recorded this interview, I believe, the last regular day of their semester, right before, maybe it was the last day of finals week, right before a commencement. And so it was an incredibly busy time. And I am so thankful to all four of them. So please enjoy. Well, we are here with another episode of Psych Sessions, and this is extra special for a couple of different reasons. First off, we have a plethora of guests today, and I am with two faculty members and two students virtually via Zencastr, and they are all from Minnesota State University-Mankato. And so I'm going to say their names as best as possible, and then I'm going to actually have each of you kind of introduce yourself and talk about your role, and I'm going to have the faculty members talk about how long you've been there and like your position, and then students. Yes, we have students, which is awesome. I'll have you talk about, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, what you're studying, what you're interested in. Does that sound okay?
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to pause and let our audience know that I'm not the only one that's going to talk the whole time. So I am here. Oh, I should have practiced this last name, but that's okay. Dr. Karla Lassonde.
Yeah.
Or do I add the E?
No, you've done it with flying colors. Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Emily Stark, and then two undergraduate students, Louisa Hall and Ellie Tiegs. And so if our faculty members, if you would just take a moment and tell us a little bit about how long you've been there, what you study, that would be great.
Okay, I'll start. I'm Karla Lassonde, and I'm a cognitive psychologist. I hail from the University of New Hampshire, where I got my doctorate. I grew up and went to a small liberal arts college, and so preparing myself as an undergraduate was really important for my choice to be faculty eventually at MSU-Mankato. I just finished up my 11th year, and I specialize in cognitive psychology. And through the years, that's really helped direct me and amplify me into the science of learning and also communicating science. And I hope to talk a lot about that through the rest of today's podcast.
Great. Thank you. Emily.
Hello. Yes, this is Emily, and I'm a social psychologist. I grew up here in Minnesota and got my degree in social psychology at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. And I just completed my 13th year at Minnesota State-Mankato, where I study a range of topics. I think social psychology lends itself to pretty much everything and anything that humans do, so I can make a lot of things fit in. I'm particularly interested in critical thinking and biases and how we think about our worlds, and that's led me to develop an interest in communicating effectively about psychology as a way to correct some of these biases and encourage critical thinking about all the things we encounter every day.
So before we go to the students, can I just ask a quick question? So what's the moniker? Is it MSU-Mankato? Is it Minnesota State? Is it Min State Mankato? How do I say the name of your school correctly, the way most people say it?
That's a very good question, and I'm sure university marketing has real specific ideas. I think the first time it said they like Minnesota State University-Mankato, And then after that,
okay.
Minnesota State-Mankato is what I think.
Yeah, I would agree, Emily. Yep.
Okay. At Boise State, they prefer that we not say BSU anymore. And if you think about it, for obvious reasons,
Yeah.
BSU. Yeah. So we try to say Boise State. All right. So students, please go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Yeah, I can start. So I'm Louisa. I just wrapped up my junior year, at Minnesota State University-Mankato. So kind of my path to coming to Minnesota State University-Mankato is a little bit more non-traditional. But yeah, just to give a little background, I actually was at a community college for to finish off my Associates of Arts degree, and then actually this past school year was my first year at Minnesota State University-Mankato. And so yeah, but it's been awesome. I've enjoyed my time here at MSU, and being able to fully learn more about psychology, and enjoyed a lot of my courses. And I'm particularly, it kind of changes every day, honestly, what I'm interested in. But I have been particularly interested in like circadian psychology, so kind of the study of like sleep and psychology, and as well as cognitive psychology. And I don't know, I'm still trying to like narrow down exactly what area of psychology I enjoy. But that's the beautiful part, I think, about psychology, is how broad that it is. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right. So I'm Ellie, and I'm majoring in psychology. This is my third year, just finished it up, going on to the fourth year. And when I came to MSU, I wasn't sure what I wanted to study, but after stumbling around through different subjects, psychology is what I landed on. And I guess I'm finding that the more time I spend in school, the more I'm able to narrow down my interests, even though I still feel like it's pretty broad. But right now I'm feeling that I'm pretty interested in the biological side of psychology and understanding the mechanisms of how many cognitive processes work. And I don't know, but then I feel like if anyone was talking to me about any area of psychology, whether it's like social aspects or you name it, I could find myself being super interested.
Okay, great. Thank you. So Louisa and Ellie, so were you enrolled this past semester right now in the Communicating Psychological Science course?
Yes, correct.
All right, so that's why you're here with us today, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
And then Karla and Emily, you team teach the course, is that correct?
No,
No.
not quite.
Okay, you can see who did his homework. Yeah.
No, it's completely fine. I can give you a little bit of the origin story, but I don't want to do that if you don't think but okay, so the course I've taught it for the second time, the Communicating Psychological Science course. And believe it or not, it was a brainchild after attending the Alan Alda Center at Stony Brook's boot camp, if you will, on how to communicate science. And I came back to my campus just rip-roaring, ready to develop a new way for our undergraduates to be ambassadors for the field. And that came out of a couple years studying misconceptions. And Eric, you know, the work that's gone into clearing up and refuting misconceptions is enormous. And so being one of the players in that game, I thought we can start with our undergrads, and that we should. At the same time, Emily and I, we do a ton of collaborative work with undergraduates, and we developed this idea that we should apply for an APS, the Association for Psychological Science Teaching Fund grant. We had seen some websites that came out of that grant, and I'm not sure, Emily, you might remember a few more of the details, but we thought this is what we can do to contribute. We can create a website that helps both highlight our department, our students. And so the folding in of where Emily and I intersect is that the out project of the class is that students are writing blogs, and the blogs then they backfill all of the content for the website. And Emily and I are co-creators of that site. I hope that helps just a little bit.
It does, but okay, if this were visual, you'd see me calling timeout with my hands like in football, because I have 42 questions. And so you go to a workshop and you come home and then you decide I'm going to invent a website and a class.
Yes.
Pretty much. That's actually about right. Because we wanted
your campus needs to be really careful where they send you.
Well, and you know what, Eric, I do want to say our department is just the most collaborative, interesting, amazing group of cohesive individuals. And they allow us almost disruptively to come to a department meeting and say, we would like to do this. I would like to teach a new class. And of course, we have to rein each other in. But they just say, we think that they have good ideas. Let's see where this lands. And that has been the most fun part of this all.
Departmentally, in the culture, how valued is this, let's say, compared to teaching, compared to research publication?
I think one of the things that's exciting about our department is that there is such a focus on different types of outreach, both from a faculty perspective of going out in the community and giving talks, using graduate students as ambassadors for psychology in our specific programs. And so there is a lot of respect given to this type of activity that doesn't fit that traditional, I'm writing a research article and publishing it mode. And it really does make it an exciting place to work and to engage with students, because we have never gotten any type of pushback saying like, okay, that's great, but you still definitely have to publish, right? We still definitely do that type of more traditional academic work, but creating this, it's creatively fulfilling, and it gives us another way to promote the academic research that we're doing in ways that honestly feel like it's making more of an impact on people than that article I published in a journal that I don't know how many people are reading or what that's actually doing.
Well, I want to circle back to that, because I think you're exactly right. So both of you started this kernel of a project, I want to say about 2 years ago. Is that the timeline?
Yep, just under 2 years.
And where were you each in your careers? Were you tenured? Were you untenured? Were you assistant professors?
2 years ago, I think I had just gotten promoted to full professor. So I was tenured and I had been promoted. And so I felt like I was at a place where I felt really comfortable devoting time to really pursuing my own interests, even if that didn't seem necessarily to fit into what most people think of as, this is what a professor should be doing.
Yeah, and I was tenured and I was going into my year of application for full professor. I guess I was the risk taker, if there's such a thing. But I guess I do want to say that our department shoulders this sort of creative outreach work, as Emily said. And they were just fully supportive, knowing that we trust each other and we do vet each other's. We're just extremely vocal and collaborative. And once, I think tenure does help, Eric, but we were definitely not stifled in any way.
Yeah, I definitely want to give. I mean, obviously, the two of you are very generous and gracious, and you're giving credit to your department, which is a really smart thing to do publicly. But let's not leap over the fact that the two of you took a risk, and that in other places this could have been seen as, "What are you doing? You're taking time away from your lab. You're not cranking out a 15th and 16th publication in the past 4 years." And I want to come back to and I think Emily said this. I agree with you completely. The types of things that you're posting on your website, and let's just be really clear about this, is communicatingpsychologicalscience.com. And let's be sure that we say that about 40 more times before we're done. This site is beautiful. It's gorgeous. I'm looking at it right now on one of my 4 screens in my home office. And it is lovely. It's well done. It looks professional. It is professional. And I think that people going here and reading these articles, Emily, I agree with you. someone who's reading, I'm gonna read the titles of the first four that are at the top. Insanity, an idea for the courts, meditation, and improved academic performance, how early childhood experiences may affect college students' relationships, interleaving, your studying superpower. Someone who reads one of those four, I guarantee those are getting more read than the last four things I published.
And it sometimes feels disheartening to be putting in work to doing the research and writing it up and responding to reviewers and making the case, and then it sometimes just feels that it goes off into this black hole. And so it is very personally rewarding to have something where it's easy to share, it's in a readable format, and I think it helps. The students can weigh in, but I think it helps them see that connection, that this is the point of research. It's not to have a line on my Vita or an article in some bound library somewhere. It's to communicate some piece of information that might potentially help someone else do something. And that's the idea behind Karla's whole class and the experience of the Ellen Alda Institute. And so the website it almost felt like we had to do that with the class to have that outward communication piece to break out of this insular mold that we get into as academics.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
Well, I really want to eventually wrap the students back in, but I do want to go back to another point. So we teamed up with a professional superstar group at sciencesites.org, and our partners were Mark Kaufman and Heather Wax. And I cannot say how important it was, and you can appreciate this, Eric. Basically, we're going to have to figure out a way to edit this, but our university, if you want to get something done on a technical web-based platform, it's going to take 2 years and it's going to be a heartbreaker of a process. And so that's why we decided to get just a few, I mean, it really wasn't that much money, but that allowed us to take a chance. And so I saw the sites that, so sciencesites.org is a nonprofit site where they usually kick out really beautiful websites for researchers. But these researchers, they might have a grant or their university has a little bit of money to put toward the site. And so when I asked Mark, can you team up and help us? They actually took a risk. They've never done a site like this before with this particular intent. And we got it finished. I looked back at my emails. We started in the second week of May, and we were ready to go in October. And that is lightning speed, as you both know, in terms of the university world. We couldn't have done that. And so I just want to be clear that Emily and I, we kind of have the creative licensure that we're not directly affiliating this site with the university. And that's a whole other story. But
yeah, and well, for Louisa and Ellie, and for everyone listening, there are so many there are some meta lessons going on here that I just want to take 30 seconds to point out. So first off, Karla and Emily, one of the things that they're doing is that they're not taking any credit and they're not taking any bows, but they're crediting everybody else on the planet except them, which is really smart, really savvy, and incredibly wrong, because they've done all of this amazing work. And so kudos to you. Secondly, it's very smart to go outside the university just because of all the bureaucracy. However, thirdly, it's relatively easy to launch the website. It's super hard to keep it up to date. And so the credit that I want to give you is that your website is up to date, because I see a post on your website dated May of 2020, and I'm pretty sure we're sitting on May 8th of 2020 as we record this. And so if you went to my website, you'd see it's a year and a half out of date. It's really easy to start a website, relatively speaking. It's super hard to keep it up to date. So anyway, that was longer than 30 seconds.
Karla and I will definitely take the credit for maintaining the website. And we thought exactly that. We don't want to put in all this work and then have it, be something after a few months that falls off. So we've been very focused on making sure we've got posts, incorporating it as assignments into our classes, bugging our colleagues. So thank you.
So let's switch gears for a moment. I want to come back to the faculty perspectives about the class, but we've got these two awesome students on the line. It doesn't happen very often. So Ellie and Louisa, if you would tell me a little bit about so going into this semester, what did you think this class was going to be about, and what did it turn out being about?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I would say kind of going into it, I didn't really have too much of an expectation, but I just kind of thought like, oh, this is going to be probably more of a science-based class, being that the title includes, the psychological science. And so I guess going into it, I was just kind of like, yeah, okay, we'll see how this goes. Didn't have too many expectations, but yeah, my perspective on the class radically shifted. I think even just like on the first day, as Dr. Lassonde just shared with us about how this class is going to be a lot about, like learning how to communicate, but using like different improv activities and just implementing a lot of different ways to work on communicating psychology as a science. And so, it ended up being a very different class, but one that has been very transformative in my own just studies in psychology and as a student. And so, that's what I got there.
Yeah, so I heard about the class. There was a research meeting. I think that's what it was, like a little research recap. And Professor Lassonde was at the meeting, and I believe she gave a little plug for the class and mentioned the blog site that her and Dr. Stark have. And just hearing that, I thought it sounded super cool. It was something that I've never heard of, especially something that our professors were doing that students could be involved in and have an important role in. So that appealed to me for sure. And I guess another thing that I knew about the class, or what I thought about the class, was just that I haven't had a class with Professor Lassonde before. So I feel like as a student, a lot of us always think about, or maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but thinking like, what's the professor like? What's their teaching style and stuff like that. And I had heard a lot of positive things about Professor Lassonde. So it's like that also helped me looking forward to the class. And I just sort of knew that at the end we would be writing blogs, but I didn't know what would be going on in the middle.
Okay, great. And I know that you're both at the very end of the class right now as we speak. Reflecting back on the class, and this is a little bit, high wire because, the professor's listening, right? What do you think, if you had to guess, what do you think the takeaway is going to be for you from the class? And obviously she thinks it's a positive one because you got invited to be here on this. But I guarantee she would prefer your honest answer over anything else. So what do you think your takeaway will be from the course?
Yeah. You want to go, Ellie? Do you have a...
Yeah, I'll go. I guess one big takeaway for me is that I realized that no matter how astounding of a message that you have, or like how relevant you feel that some information is that you just need to share with someone, you won't reach someone unless you have empathy toward that person and you consider the needs of that person that you're communicating with. Just that idea that communication isn't a one-way street, and that it's the way that you present the information that you have to share to people that's what's going to make an impact on them, not necessarily the information that you're trying to give away.
Yeah, I would say kind of building upon that, for myself, I think one of the biggest takeaways from this course has been and will be just this idea of the importance of our stories and the importance of others' stories. We had a whole kind of section during this class where we talked a lot about what does it mean to tell a story. And in fact, one of my favorite, I think, memories from this course was we had an activity in class where we had to just share with a smaller group. And yeah, I think Ellie and I were both in the same group along with two other students, but we had the opportunity to just share a story from our own life, just like a few minutes, but we had to make sure we had like a distinct beginning and like middle and end. But this particular moment stands out to me because I just remember that it was just like a very sacred space to be able to share these stories from our lives, but also to recognize the importance of our own stories and how that like when we use a story to communicate, it inspires others and that it's able to connect people, and that with psychology and when it comes to communicating psychology, like the most effective approach to do so is by telling a story. So I would say that is probably one of my biggest takeaways from this course is the importance of my story and other stories and to communicate psychology through stories.
Wow. I can't speak for Emily or Karla, but I think I almost can. The three of us faculty members are just sitting here with smiles on our faces, just really proud
Yay!
of the things that the two of you are saying. And, I didn't teach the course, but I'm really proud of the course that got taught, I got to tell you.
Yeah.
I want to follow up on the story with Ellie and Louisa just one more time. Do you think this course or this series of experiences will help you tell your own story when it comes to after you graduate, whether you're going into the psychology workforce, whether you're thinking about graduate school or med school or whatever that plan is? Were there any pieces of that might help you build a resume or a CV as you move forward?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, most definitely. For myself, I would say that I think honestly at first it was and I think why this component of this recognizing that I have a story and that, the importance of stories, I think why it has such a significance from this course is because going into this course, I honestly didn't really think about how important my own story was. It was easy for me to be like, oh, I'm just another student and along this path of studying psychology, but not really seeing the significance of all of just the little moments in my own life that have built up to where I'm at now. And so I think, yeah, most definitely that this will influence in my future and giving me, I think, also the confidence that that each of these, different ways that I have been supported along this journey in my education, and as I continue on, that they have significant importance, and that that will lead me into the career that I will then choose thereupon, and to be able to use that to continue that path. So yeah.
Yeah, and for me, I have to agree, of course. I guess this course emphasized and taught us the importance of stories. And, going forward after graduating from MSU, there's always going to be incidents where we need to promote ourselves or ask somebody for something or develop new relationships, and sharing our stories are so integral in that. And I think that this course helped me discover that we have so many stories to share, and that it doesn't have to be one story that you share over and over again, but you can pull different stories from different moments of our lives and apply those to all the different circumstances, I guess, that we find ourselves in. And stories are just, I guess, since everybody has a story, I feel like that plays such a role in why they connect us to one another. And I guess that just reinforces how meaningful it is to be able to develop an understanding that everyone has a story, but also develop an understanding of how we can tell our own stories to people and get our message across.
Yeah, the story piece is really powerful. I'm gonna come back to Karla and Emily here in a moment. I tell people all the time on my campus, our department needs to tell its story better. That faculty members are so busy doing things that we don't stop to tell our story on our own department website, for example. That faculty members are so busy doing their job that they don't tell their own story in their own CV, in their own, in their own documents, in their own personal website. Universities are going to have to get better telling their story. Even pre-COVID-19, universities were relying on 100-year-old traditions and reputations. And now in the COVID-19 era, everything is going to change. And we all need to do better, I believe, in telling, we're going to have to do better. For example, why should students in the fall choose MSU-Mankato or Boise State as their online provider if we're not back face to face in the fall? And so this ability to tell stories is really powerful. I'm going to let Emily and Karla comment on those two items, if you would.
It's so funny to hear you say that, because that's absolutely the importance of telling our story and promoting the work that we do as a department is also one of the major goals of starting this website. Because I agree, we're not necessarily always thinking of that first. And we've seen it concretely reflected in how we're considered for hiring perhaps of new faculty, or, the various decisions that administration can make that affect us. And we realize, wait a second, you don't know the stuff that we're doing, and you don't know why that's important and how that's benefiting our students. And that's on us. We need to be better at sharing that. And so that is another piece of our website. We can both promote and highlight the student writing, but we can also share, hey, here's this cool thing a faculty member is doing. Here's an outreach piece. Here's a neat pedagogical approach to teaching a class. And we're bringing it all together. So yes, I wholeheartly agree. And especially going forward, I think everyone is waking up to the need we need to make an understandable case for why us, why psychology, why college even. And if we're not able to do that, it's going to hurt.
I agree. I think, Eric, you can be sensitive to this coming from a state system. We have to carve out, what is it that our identity is? How are we serving students? And as Emily said, the mission behind the website more broadly is outreach. One of the things that we do and we're really proud of is we work on high school classes with instructors who are teaching psychology in the high schools all around the region of Minnesota. And we love doing that because we think that is a recruiting ground for not just the institution, but psychology at large. But you're exactly right. And if we can position ourselves as not just being scholarly or teaching centered, which we hope we're already known for, but being a community connector could be another draw for us in the university.
No, the both of you you're just exactly right. And you're ahead of this.
I'm going to isolate that audio and put that in my CD and all my materials, and I'll make all my students listen to it.
You can use it as a ring. You can use it as a ringtone if you want to.
One of the things, Eric, that we've heard in the last 2 years when we're fighting for our existence, we have a big department. We're probably jostling at any time for the second or third enrollment in terms of undergraduate majors. And our provost has said a number of times, you all are doing so many things, but you aren't telling us. And so we feel like we are, but obviously we've been really sharpening up in that way. And one of the ways that we've been successful is working directly with our college. We are in a College of Social and Behavioral Science, and they have an excellent media relations coordinator. And you're right, the game has changed. And so in addition to having the web-based presence, the online presence and the telling the story on Instagram and Facebook is really relevant, and something that you can't put on just the faculty's shoulders. And so we are really using the players that are on the team within our college as well.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, Emily and Karla, you're saying all the right things all the time.
See, I'm a fifth generation Minnesotan. If you think I'm going to take credit, for literally
I know, and I know at the Ellen Alden Institute they taught you yes and. Yeah. I understand that. I want to do a yes but.
That's right. When does the crash and burn?
No, it's a yes but. Yes, but for example, I'm looking at this very beautiful communicatingpsychologicalscience.com, and Emily and Karla, your name's not on it.
You got to go to the about page. We're there somewhere.
But your name's not on the front page.
A revision.
Your name's not on it. And I get the Minnesota reference. I grew up north of Chicago. I get the Midwestern. We're going to trip over ourselves and burn ourselves before we take credit. I get that, but I don't think we're in Kansas anymore. I think in this environment, I think you got to take a bow.
Cool. Work on it.
That's really sweet. That's a really nice way. That's like mom and dad saying, "We'll think about it." I get it. I get it. You're not going to do it, but you don't want to say it to my face.
Yeah.
I think we should put our names on there. I'm all.
Yeah, let's do it.
Now that we were a little hesitant. You launch something new like this, and it's just what's going to happen. And it's been so exciting to have this be wonderfully received that I think we've made a test case, and certainly, yes, we can center ourselves a little bit. Though really the whole idea is, right, it's not about us. We want to center our students as much as possible. And that's what makes this different from some of the other psych blogs and psych websites that we were inspired by, that it's more of a collaborative in terms of people contributing to the writing of it.
Yeah, but okay. All right. So to get serious for a second, and it's incredibly collaborative. You have all the names of all your contributors on the website, and I'm not suggesting on the cover page, on the landing page, I'm not suggesting taking away anyone's contribution or any of the bylines. Why not add the co-founders of this site to the landing page?
Yes, period.
Yeah, and the other important reason to do that, and then I'm going to get off of this topic, I think, is that this is a good role model exercise for your students so that they see what they should do. Because if you don't, and I promise not to go here too deeply, if you don't, then maybe we start to veer into this imposter phenomenon notion where, well, my faculty members, didn't take credit, so maybe I'm not deserving to take credit.
That's a good point. I think it's good to name also that, especially for women in science, it's helpful to be a little bit more self-promotional, because that,
yes,
just to contribute to push back against gender stereotyping around what women do and what they don't do. So that is a point well taken for what we model to our students too.
Yeah, because it's just really pretty awesome, and I know you'll do it tastefully, and you don't have to do it. You can tell me to go. Well, you wouldn't do that. You're Minnesotans. You can tell me to go read a book. You can tell me to do
better. But we have been given liberty to swear, so
yes, you have.
Just revving
for our listeners. Our pregame chat, anyone can drop the F-bomb at any time. So, just so you know. So I want to, I have a couple other things I'd like to chat about if we have a little bit of time left, but did anyone else want to chat about the course or the website or the experience? Any of the four of you want to add any final thoughts?
I did want to add, one of the things that students constantly acknowledged about the course, in addition to the storytelling piece, was the role of empathy. And you see people communicating science. And one of the big takeaways from the Alda Institute is, in order to be listened to, in order to connect, we have to be connecting on a human level, right? And I think that that's magical for psychology, because psychology is about the human experience. So one, I don't think we're teaching our students how to do that very well, let alone the general public. But we have a really great opportunity to do that, because our public and our students, they want to see these connections and how psychology is so pervasive in their lives. But if we keep doing it within the context of the journal and kind of keeping it for ourselves, we're really not doing the field as much credit as we need to. And students would say, I never thought about, or, they're trained to think of their own writing. They're not trained in how to connect with another person. And it really has helped me teach them how to kind of drill down their language and change it so that it's more, and I want to be clear, it's not about being soft. It's not about being unscientific. It's about speaking in a way that we all are at the table. Grandma is understanding. I get it. The students get it. And that is really developed out of the piece of empathy for other humans.
And Karla, just one last thing. Can you give our listeners just a quick 50-cent differentiation between empathy and sympathy?
Oh, great. I get my Psych 101 boots back on.
I'm sorry. We can take this out.
No. Sympathy is really when you say, oh, I'm sorry for your loss. And it can come off as shallow because you're not connecting with them as if you're sharing the experience. Whereas empathy is you may not have suffered a loss recently, a job loss, a human loss, but you dive into your experiences and you are genuine and authentic when you say, I'm sorry, I can't recreate what you're going through, but I can listen to you. And so it's opening up the pathway. And really, I see it as not being shallow, but saying, this is something that will happen to me. So I'm going to put my wishes, my good wishes out there for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think our listeners will too.
Cool.
So when did your campus make the COVID-19 pivot?
We were on spring break. It was pretty quick. Karla and I met on Tuesday of our spring break about some in-person outreach things we were planning the following week. By Wednesday of spring break, I think they had said, okay, we're going online and students get an extra week of spring break, so faculty get that additional week to push everything online. And then the Sunday before we were supposed to start back up, they said, here's another week, never mind. And so the remaining 7 weeks of the semester turned into 5 weeks of instructional time. So we were given a good chunk of time to transition to online. And it was perhaps helpful that we were on spring break. So at least we had a little bit of time to breathe then to realize, okay, this is what's happening. And it was right around mid-semester too. So it's very much a half and half. But that was mid-March, that maybe first week of March, I guess, is when it all just happened really quickly.
So the 1 week of spring break turned into 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
And students had the 3 weeks completely off, but the faculty members in theory were prepping for the return to the semester.
Yeah. I mean, we were kind of like sitting ducks, if you will, like Emily said. We were, you do a variety of things on spring break, right? Eric, you might write, you might do something with your family. And so when we knew on Thursday of spring break week that the chancellor had made that final call, and we all just held our breath because no one said whether we were going to pivot on Monday. And we assumed that wasn't true. And so because we have 37 institutions in our system, I think there was a lot of groundwork to cover. And really, they said, okay, we're going to give you a week. And that must have caused just people were tenuous about what that meant. And then they just threw another week. But I think our university has really responded pretty well. Ellie and Louisa, you can tell me how it felt potentially to have 3 weeks of spring break.
I would. That's one of the things that I was excited that we were going to have students on. Of course, I wanted to talk about communicatingpsychologicalscience.com. And I'm going to keep saying that website over and over. But I really wanted to talk to both faculty and students about the pivot, because I haven't gotten to talk to people really too much off of my campus about it. And so, Louisa and Ellie, what was this like from your perspective? I would love to hear you talk about it.
Yeah, so for myself, it definitely came as a surprise. I was not anticipating everything to happen so fast. And I was especially, just very surprised by the change. I mean, honestly, having a few more weeks of spring break wasn't, too bad of a deal. I was able to get some other things done that I wanted to do and just take it easy. But I was a little bit leery of the fact of taking online courses. I know for myself, specifically, that I do better in person classes. And so I was a little bit nervous about how that would be and how the coursework would, how that would work being online. And so, I think there was a little bit of anticipation, a little bit of anxiousness of what will that look like? How will that be, especially for, the course that we've been mentioning about communicating psychological science, like in classes where it is such an important element to have those personal connections. I think I was also kind of disappointed to not be able to continue certain classes in person. So that was kind of my take on it.
Yeah, for me, I have to agree that, having those extra 2 weeks that I wasn't anticipating was, in some respects, a pretty nice surprise. It was sort of like having 2 winter breaks in one school year. So during my extra time, I was able to move my stuff home. I was living with my sister at the time. So it was nice to have that time to be able to adjust to living in a different environment again before school started up again. And I also was able to use that time to start preparing for my courses, ones that I was finding to be a bit more challenging and needing more studying. So I guess that was difficult for me, just the transition and having those 3 weeks where we weren't doing any coursework, especially like for a chemistry class. I found that I needed to review a lot in order to be prepared again when we started. But then, like Louisa mentioned, it was also hard to, consider, well, when will I start seeing people again? And will I see people again? I have friends that are graduating and going, moving away, doing their own things. And so it's just, there's a lot of uncertainty like there is for everyone. And I guess I considered myself very fortunate to be a student in this situation, because I kept considering what it would be like to be someone in a role such as a professor and having so many people depending on you and having to make all these new transitions in terms of changing how you had been providing information to people in the past. So I was grateful that I'm, it's like 20 years old just in school, and while that's challenging, I feel like I have responsibilities, but not to the degree that others do. I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, Ellie, it does make sense, and it's a really mature perspective to take. So for Louisa and Ellie, without naming names or specific classes, did professors do a pretty decent job on the pivot, or did your twice a week 75-minute lecture become a twice a week 75-minute synchronous Zoom lecture?
Yeah, for most of my courses, they actually were asynchronous, so we didn't necessarily meet at all, like over Zoom. But I think for myself, I mean, exactly as Ellie was mentioning, just that transition and uncertainty and all of that, I think I definitely had a lot of questions that perhaps were unanswered at first. But, of course, those questions were then answered as the semester progressed on. But I think there was definitely a part of me was like, oh, I just want to know how everything's going to turn out. So, yeah.
In my situation, I guess I was really pleasantly surprised and almost overwhelmed how understanding my professors were. And I really felt like through the emails we were getting or videos we were seeing that they genuinely cared about us as students. And I think that helped with this new learning environment, knowing that our teachers still had high expectations for us in terms of wanting us to put in what we could given our situation for any given day. But at the same time, I think that also helped with, as a student, being understanding that our professors are going through the same thing. Like, we can't have as high of expectations in terms of expecting everything to maybe come out, on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 8 a.m. And just, I think how our teachers responded really helped in terms of me being more understanding of different situations, like video lectures maybe having to be split up so there's more videos but they're shorter in length, or having a video lecture that was an hour long just like our lecture halls were, but there's like way more information packed into it than if we would have actually been in class. So it's like sort of across the board in terms of how my professors handled it or how I felt that they did. But I think that there was a lot of understanding on the professor's side of things, and they really conveyed that to students and encouraged us to ask questions if we have questions, and to know that like everyone's going through this together.
Mm-hmm.
That is really good to hear. So how about for Karla and Emily, did you feel like, I would just like to hear about your experiences and hear about the kinds of support that you had from the university.
We have a great IT department at the university, and they were really quick to try to pull together resources, create websites targeted for students and targeted for faculty that could really include an answer to as many questions as possible. They were buying laptops to get to students. They enabled Wi-Fi in a couple parking lots on campus. So last ditch scenario, you could drive to campus and sit in your car and at least access Wi-Fi that way. So I was really impressed with it. And I mean, the transition was difficult, but I have a hard time thinking of anything else that the university could really have done to support us. I was very impressed with both how they came through from a technical side, and honestly from administration being really open, saying, this is unprecedented. We know you need to do what you have to do to get through it. So, there was no, at least not from my department chair or dean, tell me exactly what you're doing to update your classes. It didn't feel like there was any extra paperwork or extra requirements. It was more just, we trust you, figure this out, let us know what you need, which I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, I'll echo the same sentiment. I really appreciate the IT infrastructure and also the website and resources. I had a student actually from this class, without disclosing too much. She had to go move with her sister, who goes to school at a university in another state. And we actually were doing a question answer type of session for this class. And there were a few people on the line. And she mentioned that just the other day, the laptop from our university was mailed directly to her so that she could do her work and be supported. And I'm sure other universities are doing things like that. But when you hear a student say that they are grateful and that when they really needed something, it showed up, that is so heartwarming. We also had stories where administrators, and maybe this isn't for everyone, but there were international students who they couldn't get home at a particular time that they may have preferred. And so we had administrators housing some students just some phenomenal cases of people being really good humans. And, just for me, I think the hardest part was taking on small children in the house. And you've heard this in different angles, I'm sure, teaching a second grader, a preschooler, and then my husband and I with full-time jobs, literally duking it out each day to see how many things we're going to be able to accomplish, while not putting the expectations so high. It's really been, there's a lot of psychology that has gone on in this moment. So I really I'm glad that we are psychologists. I think that our students, they know that our department is supportive in ways that we don't even, and I think maybe, Eric, this is something for the broader audience. We sometimes underestimate the ability of psychologists to respond to students in ways that, not to discredit other majors, but that is just natural for us. And our students know that, and I think they felt a little bit more protected in general from our department.
Well, I think you're right. I think that, what's the nicest way to say this? Our students benefit oftentimes from our superpowers, and we try to use our powers for good rather than evil almost always. And that's a good thing for our campuses as well. You all mentioned some really interesting things. Making the emergency pivot is one thing, and you're exactly right. Not only did faculty members have children to care for at home, but oftentimes, at least at Boise State, our non-traditional age students had their own children to care for as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the emergency pivot where we kind of just get through it and make it to the end of the semester. And you all had 3 weeks to prep for it over a spring break. We had a weekend. It was declared on a Friday. I take it back. It was declared on the Friday before spring break, and we had our regular 1 week spring break. We didn't have any extension. If we come back in the fall and we're not together on campus, and we go into the fall knowing that we're teaching remotely, that's a whole different thing, depending on whether or not grade schools and junior highs are open or reopened. And, those two parents who are at home still homeschooling going into it. An emergency is one thing that we get through, but when it's pre-planned, that's a whole different thing. So
absolutely. To be continued, yeah. I think.
Absolutely. So I've kept you all about an hour, and that is a big, long time. I certainly so much appreciate having this kind of conversation where you can't see one another. I want to give each of you kind of a chance, final thoughts, deep thoughts, anything you want to say about the class experience or COVID-19 or Ellie and Louisa, anything about things about your senior year that you're looking forward to next year, a project, you're a Psychi member, you're interested in something. Any thoughts from any of you?
I just want to jump in and promote Ellie and Louisa. I just saw an email that both Ellie and Louisa are going to be taking on leadership roles for our Psychi organization next fall. So congrats to the two of you, and thanks so much for stepping up and participating. You've been great, involved in Psychi in the past, and Karla's going to be taking on the faculty mentorship role with Psychi, and so happy to see some really good students involved. So a little bit more promotion to these two great students on the line here.
That's great.
Yeah, and I'll jump in so that we can end with our students. I really encourage faculty to kind of have the ear of their department like we did, and really encourage a class like this to be a capstone experience where we are showing our students a different route towards success and really the need to help the public and our students become ambassadors for psychology.
So I guess one last thing that I wanted to share about my experience in this class, I already shared this with Professor Lassonde, but reflecting on my college experience so far, I think about classes where I've felt super connected and engaged in them. And there's 3 that come to mind. And, I was trying to figure out why is it that these classes stand out to me, and why is it that I, feel more connected than I usually do to the students in my class, and feel so respected by our professor. And I guess what I found in common between all three of them is the element of sharing your story and the element of hearing others' stories and being in this proactive environment where we're not only just sharing, but we're communicating about our stories and sharing how we responded to the stories of others. So I think that, that's something to applaud, that having the ability, the creativity, the idea to teach a class in this manner is so meaningful beyond the point of preparing you to be able to communicate psychology and to communicate even just yourself, whether it's for a job application or for your resume, and just how powerful that is in a course, because I felt, sad's not essentially sad or disappointed that this is how the semester ended, partly because I wasn't going to be able to see my classmates specifically from this class again and to see our professor. And I think that's really cool that Professor Lassonde was able to foster that sort of open environment in this class.
Yeah, I would love to. I'm so glad that you mentioned that, Ellie, because I definitely agree with that and would like to build upon that. One of the things that I wanted to mention here that I just didn't quite have a chance to share yet is that, that through this course, as we mentioned, those different blogs that we were seeing on the website, and having this opportunity to write blogs as a significant part of this course, how much that this kind of built like a confidence in my own self, and through just the various activities that we were able to participate in. But particularly in these blogs, of being able to actively promote psychology as a science. And I think that's what makes this class so unique, is that this class isn't just focused on the material or the coursework, kind of in past courses that I've been in, a lot of times, and there's nothing, wrong with that, how a lot of the courses are focused on a certain, subject. But I think what makes this class so unique is that the focus is more so on the student and the transformation of the student. And with that, building the confidence and the courage to communicate psychology as a science, and to not only just that, but to grow as an individual and to gain that. So I think that is probably, as well, just to add on to some takeaways from this course, that would be something I would just like to add. And then additionally here, I just would like to speak into, this coming year, a senior year. I'm super excited. And just to continue this time of growth and education, as I continue to kind of determine my path after college and to continue that. So I'm very excited.
That is a lovely finish, and I just want to thank you all for your time today. Thank you so much.